Okay,
Thank
cool.
you.
Okay. Well, I want to introduce next Niki Wong, a senior product engineer on the Esri tutorials team. She's got a background as a community organizer and a policy advocate. She led transformative GIS-driven environmental justice campaigns in LA. Her experience in several community-based coalitions informs how she develops GIS tutorials so that users can leverage GIS as a powerful decision-making tool for positive change. And she's going to join us today to talk about community mapping for racial equity and social justice. Um, Thanks for joining us, Nikki. Really good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Hi, everyone. Great to see you all. Really honored to get to be part of this really amazing event and for this opportunity to share this learning resource that I've been working on with a couple of folks that I'm sure are in here. I saw Aisha and Clinton was part of this effort too. But yeah, I'm going to share about the community mapping for racial equity collection that has been a year-long project to develop a piece of content that equips young mappers with GIS while also kind of learning about what they can do in their own communities with an equity lens. So Clinton gave a little bit of an intro to myself, but I just want to share a little bit more background. As he mentioned, I'm a senior product engineer at Esri on the tutorials team. And in that capacity, I lead the development of ArcGIS tutorials that integrate equity lenses in GIS analysis. And I bring several years of experience as a community organizer at the grassroots level in South Central Los Angeles, which is a predominantly Black and Brown, historically underserved community of color. And throughout my time as an organizer, I really got to see and use policy maps that were made with GIS play a really critical role in advancing environmental justice campaigns that we were working on. MAPS played an integral role in helping us obtain over $26 million of infrastructure grants for safe routes to schools. And we successfully advocated for the closure of a multi-million-dollar oil drilling facility that was operating next to homes. In this picture, that's the picture of the site closing down. And this is one of the neighbors that lived across the street from this facility that I got to work with. When I joined Esri around 2020, pretty early on, I was connected with Clinton and the equity team at Esri, and that's where I learned and adopted the racial equity and social justice workflow as this guiding framework for advancing racial equity and social justice using GIS. The first step of this workflow is to map and analyze inequities, which is, I think, often what a lot of GIS folks do, just kind of seeing where there might be inequities and areas for improvement. But the next stage of this workflow kind of goes a little further where you want to use GIS tools to evaluate where you can implement actionable solutions for positive practices that move you closer to your equity goals. And then you can go even further and use GIS tools to manage the performance, monitor the progress of those equity goals to evaluate if you're moving closer towards those equitable outcomes. And the part I really love about this framework is that it's centered around engaging communities. So this step is an ongoing step that happens at every stage and basically ensures that you are engaging and connecting and integrating the local community in all of these steps. And I have to say, as someone who's been on the ground, on the fence line, working on some issues and challenges in such communities, it's so important to have the expertise and perspective of folks on the ground and their lived experiences as part of your analysis. I think as GIS professionals and analysts, we can sometimes be overly dependent on our data and make assumptions about where that data comes from, or maybe be overly reliant on our analysis process just because, we use statistics and stats and, feel really confident in that. And while all of that is certainly super important, if it doesn't line up with what people are experiencing in their day to day, the solutions we come up with will probably also fall short of what's really needed. So from the data collection process to finding solutions to really measuring how we're progressing, having the people who are actually experiencing those inequities firsthand and having their perspectives is really crucial to an effective uh, policy change. Um, and so this is the community mapping for racial equity and social justice curriculum. It's a hub site that basically organizes all of the content into 4 learning modules. It's designed to prepare and equip new or young GIS learners to gain ArcGIS online skills while integrating critical thinking for local communities and advancing tools for assessing and addressing equity. And part of what I was thinking too with this is that it would equip students with STEM skills that would prepare them for future careers that advance equity. So this is available today. It is about 10 hours worth of learning content. Just to give you a little preview of what it looks like, each section has a couple of recommended tutorials, which I'm going to walk through today, so you can get a feel for the workflow and the project that you get to complete. And then there's some recommended like extra exercises from the tutorial site, so people can continue practicing and learning their GIS skills. But every tutorial is written out in a narrative format and follows a kind of real life scenario. There's step-by-step instructions, screenshots to really guide you through the process of using the application. Um, it's designed to allow you to either pick and choose which tutorials you want to do. You don't have to do a previous one in order to start the next one. They are all standalone. But if you choose to do the whole thing, you get to kind of experience a beginning to end integrated project. So today I'm going to be demoing a really broad overview of some of the skills that you'll get to learn if you were to do the project. So in the first step of the workflow, we're going to start by this data-driven initial assessment to build a community asset map. So asset maps are a common exercise used in asset-based community development. That's basically using maps and thinking about space and location to gain a baseline understanding of the strengths and weaknesses in a given community or neighborhood. So an asset could be anything that's like a resource, like a school or a green space. It can be a strengthening characteristic in a community, like cohesion and resilience. And by taking stock of where there are opportunities and also areas of need, you can really visualize and see where there might be some solutions that can really best serve the community. As part of the engaging community component in this step, you're also going to create a survey to conduct a walk audit and then visualize those results on a map. So I'll share a little bit more about a walk audit when I get to that part. So for this example, we're going to be using the city of Baltimore as an example. And we're going to look at a number of layers that we can kind of use to assess some root causes, some current conditions, and health outcomes to kind of understand what's going on in this community. So the 3 layers we're going to use is median household income, where darker green means higher income and darker purple means lower income. We're going to look at historic data. So this is historic redlining data where the areas that were graded D were considered redlined and where a lot of persistent segregation and discrimination, discriminatory policies were enacted, even though this program has been disbanded for many years. There's still a lot of kind of remnants of that policy from back then. And then these are the percent of reported mental health distress as the health outcome. So darker blue means there was a higher percentage in these census tracts for mental health distress. This beigey color is a lower percent. So one of the things I wanted to invite students to start with is just to start interrogating the data and compare neighborhoods and ask questions like, is there a cumulative burden or cumulative benefits or privilege that some neighborhoods are experiencing? So you can create bookmarks to kind of go back to certain neighborhoods you might want to focus on. So I'll create a bookmark here for Harlem Park, and then I'll create a bookmark here for an area called Mount Washington. And then we can compare the two layers. So starting with Mount Washington, we see that the percent of reported mental health distress is relatively low. When we look at the historic redlining districts, most of the area looks like it had higher grades, a couple of kind of medium low grades here. And then for household income, it looks predominantly higher income. So when we use the bookmark to jump back to Harlem Park, we can do the same thing. So in Harlem Park, the median income is on the lower end. Looks like there was a decent amount of historic redlining that happened in this area. And there are a few areas with more higher percentage of reported mental health distress. So by comparing these different layers and different neighborhoods, just kind of starts getting students critical thinking skills going. Like, what does it mean when these things are accumulated in certain areas or not? What could that mean about the health outcomes and access to resources the different communities are experiencing? And then you can certainly add race and ethnicity data to this as well and ask questions about what we're seeing with that data as well. We'll also bring in data around public schools and parks so we can kind of take a look at what kind of resources are available to folks in this area as part of that asset mapping activity. Next, for engaging the community, I walk the students through how to create a survey to accompany a walk audit. So this is a very fun activity I got to do in South Los Angeles with my neighbors and youth. A walkability assessment or a walk audit is a very well documented community engagement tool to evaluate the built environment for pedestrian safety. It's widely used to bring members of the community together. When I've done this, we did it with everyone from kids to adults, youth, folks, neighbors who were differently abled. It was just such an enriching experience to both just see the perspective of so many people in the community while also doing something together that will ultimately enhance and improve our community together. When I did it as an organizer, we did it with pen and paper, which is certainly, still does the trick. But one advantage in creating something in Survey 123 is that you can not only digitally log all of your observations as you're walking around your neighborhood, you can then move it into a map and do some further analysis with it. So I'll show you that in a second. So with the survey, there are lots of really useful survey entries that you can prepare for folks to use while they're out in the neighborhood walking and collecting their observations. You can create a space for them to drop a picture of what they're observing. You can predefine the type of asset that they're observing. So this can be helpful just to kind of have some consistency in how people are describing and identifying things, which makes database management a little easier later along the line. So like, for example, if I wanted to kind of really highlight public art or public murals that we're seeing in our community, let's include that. You can add other things, have an other option even. And then I really like this Likert scale or kind of rating survey response. It allows you to rate the condition of an asset you observed. So in my neighborhood, street trees really varied. Some of them survived and got really big and strong, and some of them were still really small or were vandalized and were damaged. So being able to assess their condition really helped us, for example, plan out our next tree planting event and identify places where we needed to get a new tree into the neighborhood. So with Survey 123, you can collect all of those data points and then visualize them on a map. So your answers, the responses from those surveys will show up in the map. And what's really nice is then you can style and visualize your survey data in the map to kind of further help you with your analysis. So one of our questions was, what was that feature or asset that you observed in the community? So we can visualize it. And so we can see these are all the Red's where all the street trees. Let's see, we got a couple public art pieces right here. Because we also asked for the asset condition, you can also style the results in such a way so that we can really highlight what are the assets that are maybe in poorer condition, so we can kind of see quite visually the reds where there are some things that need some improvement. So that is the first step of the workflow that you get to work through. Next is to operationalize positive practices. And this is the step where you develop an actionable solution to address the disparities that you identified in the previous stage. So this usually involves combining data to understand the intersectionality of the data. Maybe you're doing some sort of suitability analysis to assess which areas in your community most need some additional support and services. So for this example, we're going to identify the areas in the city that would benefit the most from a new park with consideration for the areas that have historically experienced unequal access to the benefits and opportunities for green space. So we're going to use some map analysis tools to do that. And then for the engaging communities component, we're going to design a survey to gather community insight and kind of poll the community for which areas that you identify from your analysis would be the best for a green space. So we're going to be using these three layers again. So median household income, redlining, and the percent mental health distress. So one pretty accessible way to do a suitability analysis is to take your layers and set a criteria for each of them that reflect where you want to prioritize a resource that you want to put in. So in this case, we want to put a park in a place where maybe it's an area that has lower income, maybe it historically had redlining in it, and has a higher percentage of reported mental health distress. So what we can do is use the filter function in ArcGIS in Map Viewer to set those criteria. So for the median household income, I'll use the filter tool and set the median household income to show anything that's less than, and you can type in an exact value. So maybe the national median household income amount for a particular year and you want to enter that. You can also drag this slider of the histogram and kind of estimate how much you want to focus up on. So, say I want to focus on the top or the lower quartile, for example, of census tracts with lower median household income. So maybe that's one criteria I set. And then we want to maybe look at just the areas that were historically redlined, and then we want to look at areas that maybe experienced a higher percentage than average of the mental health distress report. And then you can use an analysis tool called overlay layers. And what this tool allows you to do is create a new layer that is only the overlapping spots of two other layers. Sorry, that's a little confusing, but basically what we can do is find the areas that meet all three of these criterias. Areas that have that lower income, were historically redlined, and have a high mental health distress report. So upon using the overlay layers analysis, you have these are the areas that meet all three of the criteria. We can turn on our public schools and public park layer again, and then we can take a look at, of these areas, where are there existing park spaces, where might there be schools where they would really benefit from a new park close by. And we can create bookmarks and kind of label them as options for where a new park ought to go. You can then turn that into an instant app where you can share this link with community members and they can take a look at the options that you have identified and then participate in a survey to rate which ones they really want to see have that new park. So in creating another community feedback form. So that first one we made was really about collecting data from the community based on observations. This is about identifying, what park location people might prefer, and also to gather insight on the perceptions of walkability and safety in the community. This is a really cool tool because whenever you apply for grants or doing policy advocacy with electeds or decision makers, being able to demonstrate the experience and perceptions of people can make a really compelling argument for the felt need for whatever policy you are advocating for. So really being able to develop these types of surveys and then connect them to a map in space can be very powerful. One type of answer I wanted to highlight was this ranking answer. So it's kind of cool. You can drag which option of those proposed park areas you prefer in the survey. And then you can also collect demographic data for your survey participants. And we're going to use this data later on in this workflow. So yeah, being able to create this survey really encourages community engagement and is also with the added benefit of doing it in Survey 123, you can bring it into a map. Survey 123 also provides a nice summary page of your survey responses that you can visualize in a column, in a bar, in a pie chart format. So these are really great ways to just have a visualization and to be able to present that to the community or decision makers. For that ranking response in the survey, I really appreciate that Survey 123 automatically calculates the score for you. So, giving people the ability to rank kind of gives a more robust way for people to answer, and you don't have to worry about doing the math to figure out which is the most popular using that method. And yeah, here's another visualization of just showing the demographic data that was collected. So finally, for monitoring and sharing the equity goals, you're going to visualize the community responses using charts, and then create a story that using story maps to share about your proposed park plan and to elevate your equity policy goal. And so for this workflow, you're going to compare the race and ethnicity of those who participated in that survey to the demographics of the local community. And just comparing this data will help you determine how well those who participated in the survey actually reflect the folks who live in the area where the park will go. So we're going to start with this map again. These are the points from that survey where people provided feedback, and these are those possible park locations that we were able to identify from the analysis earlier on. So one really great tool I wanted to highlight in Map Viewer is the Enrich Layer tool. So Living Atlas has a lot of great data where you can get demographic information at kind of your standard geographic breakdowns like tracts, blocks, counties, things like that. But when you have a situation where you've got these unique shapes, right? These are not census tracts, these are not blocks, these were created from our analysis, right? Using our criteria layers. You can use Enriched Layer to bring in that demographic data to these kind of custom shapes. So by using the enriched layer, you can access Data Browser, which has tens of thousands of variables on all sorts of topics that you can use to enrich custom polygon shape layers to get that demographic data in there. So in this example, just for these polygons, I grabbed the demographic data for race and ethnicity. And then you can create a chart that visualizes the race and ethnic makeup of the proposed park areas. So most folks in this example identified as non-Hispanic, Black. And then because in the survey we asked for the race and ethnicity of survey participants, we can also visualize a chart to compare that demographic makeup of the participants compared to those who actually live in the proposed park areas. So this data basically just helps you measure your goal of whether the survey feedback folks are representative of the population. And it doesn't necessarily mean the survey results are invalid or anything, but I think it's just an important factor to consider. It kind of helps you raise questions about like what perspectives might be overrepresented, what perspectives might be missing based on these findings, and it can also inform your outreach efforts for more survey participants and how you might adjust how and where you are reaching out to folks to complete this survey. And finally, a really important part in an equity project is to be able to share your findings and demonstrate the value of what you've learned from the community. When you communicate the purpose and rationale of your project, you can inspire others to participate in the project and even influence decision makers to support and advance your policy goals. So the tutorials will walk you through how to create this story map. And ArcGIS Story Maps is a great way to include images and narrative to really give a really rich experience for your viewers to understand the policy or issue that you are working on. And it also includes a way for you to really demonstrate with an interactive kind of visual component, your data process. So you can create maps and action links so people can understand what data you were using. People can explore and understand how you determined the criteria area that led you to determine these possible park areas. You can show the survey results from people ranking which areas they preferred. And to increase transparency, you can even add an instant app that shows those pie graphs that compare the demographics of the possible park areas to those who have participated in the survey so far. And one of the most important parts of any advocacy content is a call to action. It's really important that after your reader learns about your issue and reviews your analysis, that you provide them with an immediate next step. So this could be to participate in a survey, maybe send a message to a decision maker, give a donation, sign up for a newsletter. There's all kinds of things you can do, but it's important to have an immediate next step. And with ArcGIS story maps, you can embed Survey 123 straight into the story map. So after people are done learning and reading about the issue, they can immediately submit a survey response. And then I close here with sort of, just a guidance sample script for what you can say to your elected official to move a particular piece of policy. Maybe this is like a measure about like park funding or something. Great. So that is the community mapping for racial equity and social justice workflow. Like I said, this resource is available right now for you to access. So if you are, getting started with learning ArcGIS online, or you have students or know of folks who are really interested in integrating GIS with equity, I highly recommend checking this out and giving this a try. It's written in a way that you can actually redo the entire workflow in any part of the United States. All of that data is available in ArcGIS Living Atlas. So do check that out. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, I write a number of tutorials around racial equity beyond what's in this collection. So I provided a link there to our main tutorial gallery where you'll find lots of other content using ArcGIS Pro, more ArcGIS Online, workflows like building a social equity index, doing environmental health and justice analyses. So that's all there for you as well. And please do reach out and connect with me if you're interested in collaborating, have questions, or want to partner in kind of showcasing some of this content. The best way to connect with me will be through LinkedIn, so I provided that link at the top there. And I'll drop links to all of these in the chat as well.
Thank you so much, Nikki. That was really great. And it was good to see um, this come to fruition. Um,
Yeah.
having been there at the early stages of your work on this and seeing your passion for it, and also um, being at Esri in the point where nothing like this existed, and to now um, having you in your role, and Raina described her role, feels like significant milestones for the GIS community overall. So thank you so much, and we'll be looking forward to seeing more of you at our events, sharing more of your great work.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for having me.
This brings us to our close, y'all. So, as I said earlier, we've spent this year, focusing through this intersecting lens of art, Afrofuturism, and geography.